Welcome again to another episode of Inspiring Young Men to Integrity with Biniam. My name is Biniam, I'm your host. Today we are on the final prerequisite for integrity. We're talking about desire, the desire for integrity. I've been looking forward to this one here for quite some time now. It's been on my radar, and it's been on my radar in a way that I've really desired. Speaking of desire, I've really been desiring to get to this point here because herein I want to talk about something crucial and so important in a way that it envelops so many of all the other prerequisites we've been exploring and discovering along the way. Yesterday we were talking about consistency, the backbone of integrity, in the way that I have experienced it, and why it is so critical to the survival of all of the other prerequisites. But I gave you a hint yesterday saying that consistency can seem dry, it can seem cumbersome, it can seem like something you have to do, but your desire, like you really don't want to. It can almost come across as like a chore. And I don't want to present a model of walking in integrity that seems like a chore. In fact, I like pursuing things that bring pleasure and things that make me feel good and things that promote happiness and joy. And as I seek these experiences, I also want to find them in a way that's sustainable, in a good way, where I'm continuing to grow and evolve and develop. And those are all really important components. So even as I was addressing the prerequisite and necessity for consistency in one's walk in integrity, I was concerned to make sure that this isn't coming across as, okay, we got to do this even though it's going to suck. Like, you know, the feeling when you know you have to go to the gym and you really don't want to go to the gym, you're like, oh, but I got to do it kind of thing, right? That's where desire comes in. And I want us to finish this whole series of prerequisites, which has been a fantastic series. Like, I've really been enjoying it. 10 prerequisites in, and I'm hoping that it served you, my dear young man, well, by way of having some code hooks to watch for where you want to camp out and work on some of these prerequisites as we collectively pursue walking in integrity. So if consistency is the backbone of integrity, how do we maintain consistency, especially if it's vital for the sustaining and supporting of all of the other prerequisites? Like I said, I don't want to do this out of obligation. I don't want to propose that form of this path for you guys, because I think that would be inconsistent. That would be the kind where we'd be like, I don't feel like it today, and so I don't want to follow through on it. Here, however, is what I want you to consider. There has to be a longing for this, a deep want. It's like something you set your heart on. You're like, I got to have this, right? And this is where desire comes in. You have to desire this walk. And that's why, as the very theme of this platform, I included the word inspire. I want to inspire you, young men, to integrity. And that word encapsulates this form of desiring. And there's a desire inbaked in that word, to inspire. You see something and you're like, ooh, that's amazing. I want a piece of that. There's a desire for something that you're seeing outside of yourself. And that's what I mean when I say inspiring young men to integrity. There has to be this longing for. And this desire is fed in a specific way, at least in my experiential reference point. This is fueled by contrast. When I contrast where I once was with where I'm at now, or where I want to be, that contrast, that comparison of before and after, is what drives my desire. And I think that's what it does for most of us. When we consider the things that we desire in life, we look at what it was like when we didn't have that experience or that thing or that person, and what it's like when you will, or when you do have that thing that you're yearning for. And so contrast is huge. Another factor to this fueling component, which is contrast, for me, is remembering. I like remembering as best as I can. Now, I know I have the worst memory amongst my peers. My memory is not the best. People will ask me at the end of the weekend, Monday, how was your weekend? And I'll take like literally 5 minutes to try and remember, what did I do this weekend? And where was I? And what was I up to? And it takes me that process of thinking through. Even with my own kids, I don't know their birthdays off the top of my mind. I have to like look at my phone where I have it saved, for example. My memory is not the best, but there are some things I don't forget. And those are like experiences that I've come through, lessons that I've learned. There's some things that are so ingrained, and so for me, I find remembering so critical. That is a prerequisite for my contrast. When I remember, I'm like, okay, that's where I once was, let me contrast with where I'm now at or where I want to be in the future, and that is what drives my desire for whatever in life. Let's define desire a little bit. Desire is a strong feeling of wanting or wishing for something to happen. Desire is like, it's something that is deeply felt, and we know it when we've experienced it. We're like, "Urgh." It's like that feeling like a child has on Christmas Eve Christmas Eve, the day before Christmas, when they want Christmas morning to come so they can get to open the presents. There's that longing, there's that deep expression of something powerful inside that says, I want whatever it is that you want. That's desire. And I think we all have access to it. For some of us, we may have not experienced it for a very long time. And so maybe this is a point for you, my dear listener, to consider how to reawaken this experience that motivates and propels us into pursuing what could be. Now, desire for walking in integrity, which is our specific focus here today, this desire for walking in integrity is a feeling that propels young men to pursue consistency in their walk of integrity. What I'm trying to say here is, we talked about consistency yesterday, the backbone of integrity, and how without this component of desire, it can seem like a chore. It can seem like, I gotta do this, but I don't feel like doing this, but I know it's good for me. It's like eating your broccoli or whatever you don't like, but you know it's good for you. Desire, however, when you infuse that, all of a sudden it changes the game. It changes the game completely. Now, it's not I have to, but it's like I want to, I need to, I long to. This is what I was made for. I got to go this way. And that's what desire does. Desire is a feeling that propels us as young men to pursue consistency in our walk with integrity. And this is going to be critical. I'm going to touch on later in this conversation here how this is not an easy thing. Consistency in pursuing integrity, consistency in walking in integrity, not easy. This is like not for the faint of heart. We'll touch on that just at the end of this discourse here. But desire is what feeds this consistency for us to walk in integrity. And for me, I use the word contrast as a really helpful factor in this whole conversation, because often when I contrast what life was like without integrity, then I'm able to appreciate why I need integrity and why I long for it. I look at what it once was and I say, that did not serve me well, so now when I compare this with this is what is far more compelling for me. This is what I want to move into and where I want to apply myself to. And so that's really critical and important. Contrast feeds our desire for walking in integrity. Contrast feeds this desire that we have for walking in integrity. And that's why the subtitle to this conversation is The Power of Contrast. Where to find desire for integrity? Well, there's power in contrast. Contrasting where you once were with where you want to be or where you're presently at. So let's talk a little bit about before and after contrast. Before one's desire for walking in integrity, a lot of us young men experienced a lack of internal peace. We had this sense of unease, of restlessness, because we somehow knew and we felt we were not living up to our potential. Like, this isn't what life could be, and I don't know how to get to where I need it to be, but I know this isn't it. And I don't know if you're like me, but this is where I felt for so many years of my young of my young teenage years and into my 20s and even 30s, for that matter. There was this sense of being displaced and lost, and just not knowing what does it mean for me to walk into where I'm supposed to be in life right now, and how does that look like. I didn't even know how to know myself well enough. But when we commit to walking in integrity, there comes this profound sense of peace and contentment. And this comes because we're living a life that's true to ourselves. We're living not only a life that's true to ourselves, but there is an alignment that we experience of our internal values and our external actions. And if this is sounding familiar, it should, because this is how I define integrity. I define integrity by the consistent desire. Now you see how I also include that word desire as a critical part of this definition. The consistent desire of one to have their internal morals or their internal values align with their external actions while being true to themselves and respecting those around them. Like, there's so many components of that definition that really resonate with me, especially when I think of these prerequisites that we've been working our way through. And so the reason that I feel we as young men struggle with this lack of internal peace, the sense of restlessness and lack of ease, it's because we are unmoored and we don't know who we are. And when we commit to walking with integrity, here's where the contrast comes in. Before integrity, there's no awareness of what's going on in here. There's no awareness of what it means to be me, and what are my values, and where am I moving forward to, and how do I progress through this life. There's none of that. And it's in this space that no wonder we feel like this sense of, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing in life, and I feel so like I need some direction and I don't know where to find it, right? But when you commit to walking with integrity, integrity leads you down this path where you start getting familiar with who you are. You start spending some time in exploring what it means to be you and what values you subscribe to that you find compelling, and how to now, having that awareness of what your values are, start aligning with what your commitments in life are going to be. What are your, how are you actually going to follow through on the actions that affirm your values? Like, how can you see those two align? And so in this space, it's here that you start seeing the definition of integrity coming to fruition, that enables us as young men to have this strong sense of confidence, this personal confidence that increases, because when we need to make decisions, and we all need to make decisions on a daily basis, but when we need to make those decisions, we're no longer in this space of I don't know, and I don't know how to navigate. We actually know. It's very clear. We're here's what needs to happen, and here's how I'm going to progress through it. And that's because we've spent that time diminishing that sense of unawareness. Is that a word? Unawareness? Lack of awareness about ourselves, and increasing it now for confidence. And here's who I am, here's what I stand for, here's what it means something to me, and here's how I'm going to make my decisions as a result. We see that transition, which is brilliant. This is why we desire walking in integrity, because we experience what it was like without integrity, and this sense of I don't know what I'm supposed to do in life, to now I know exactly what I'm supposed to do in life, and I have this sense of purpose that drives me. That is something that is super motivating, and we long for it. We want to feel that. We want to have that sense of self-confidence where we can walk with a certainty of what's going to happen and how we're going to engage our world. Furthermore, another contrast of what it was like before we had this desire for integrity, many of us experienced a very painful topic for me, and it's so painful because I still remember what this was like when I was there once upon a time, and that is we feel socially isolated. Many of us feel, even though we might be in the midst of friends, and maybe we have people who show us love and appreciation and all these beautiful things in the context of community, we may feel very alone And I know that's how I felt. I was on the receiving end of so much encouragement and love and acceptance and all these beautiful things from many around me. And even though I was a recipient of so much of it, the way I responded to it was, I can't accept this because I know that the way I'm presenting and the way you're receiving me isn't aligned. I'm not walking in integrity. So lack of walking in integrity for me had me in this space where I felt isolated and cut off from those I was in community with. And that's such a painful feeling because we're such social beings. We thrive on settings where we can experience what does it look like to be loved and to be cared for and to be admired and to be appreciated and to be affirmed, and all these really critical components of our well-being emotionally. Like, this is all really necessary. And when we feel cut off because of lack of integrity in our lives, we experience like really shallow connections. There's a lack of deep and meaningful relationships with others, and it just seems empty and dissatisfying when we do it over and over because we don't know how to establish what it means to walk in honesty and truthfulness with those that we're in community with. We struggle with feeling respected or granting respect to those around us. And there's just a sense where we don't feel like there's a mutual understanding. Like, there's just, it's really a debilitating experience when you don't feel a sense of connection. And I still remember, like, this is why I say remembering for me is so important, because when I remember, I'm able to contrast. Contrast needs remembering. And so I look back and say, what was it like when I was an outcast, when I was on the periphery, when I needed friends and I didn't have friends? What was it like when I felt worthless? What was it like when I felt untouchable? What was it like when no one wanted to be around me? What was it like when, and it's not like I'm feeding myself this perception, it was more like this is how it was once upon a time, when I very explicitly got this kind of feedback from those I was in community with. And then even when I progressed to gain some social skills, and now that I had access to community, I still didn't feel connected because I didn't feel like they were connecting with the real Benjamin. I did not know how to even present the real Benjamin because I was like, when they find that out, I'm done for. I'm a toast. So, if you're experiencing this, I can understand how hurt and painful that is. How hurtful and painful it is because, it's not fun. And it's from there that I just want you to remember, do you desire something different? See how that word desire comes in? It comes in when we contrast. We were saying, okay, we're not where we want to be, but here's what could be. What it could be to feel loved. What it could feel like to be affirmed and accepted and enjoyed and sought after, and like these beautiful things that happen when we get together with people. What would that be like? That's something that we could experience desire for. But that comes when we contrast, doesn't it? Saying, okay, here's where it is at now, and here's what it could be. For me, it's in a different way. Here's where I'm at now, in the middle of this space that I really, really appreciate, and that I'm trying to describe for you guys so you could have a piece of it too. I long for that for you as well. I long for you to experience what I experience. That's why I'm doing all of these addresses and spending time creating this content, is because I want you to also have that as well. But that contrast is really helpful, and it doesn't come, like what I'm describing here does not come until one commits to walking in integrity. What do you mean by that? With integrity comes this demonstration. Like, integrity is going to lead you down this pathway where you learn, first of all, to be honest and consistent with yourself. And as you do that from your internal core, and as you start learning who you are and how to be true to your values and how to be consistent in living out those principles that you subscribe to consistently in your actions, as you start learning to do this, then you're able to now be perceived by those you're in community with on the very premise of what you're doing for yourself. That honesty and that consistency that you're applying to yourself consistently starts coming out of you. And others see that and they're like, we like that and we want to connect with that. And as you learn to be true to yourself, it's your true self that others fall in love with, and they start saying, we want a part of what you stand for. We want to be a part of your space, because we appreciate authenticity and being genuine. It nurtures these deep connections with others because they trust you based on your honesty and your consistency. They start investing in you, and who doesn't want this? This is what we long for and desire for, isn't it? It brings this tremendous sense of fulfillment and contentment. It brings an enrichment into your setting of life where your connections now have meaning. They are purpose-filled, and it's a wonderful thing. If you don't have this yet, the way you approach it is by first committing to walking with integrity in your own personal context. And what does that look like? Finally, another contrast of what it's like to have a desire for integrity but not quite be walking in integrity. It comes with this sense or lack of direction in life and feeling like you don't know what your purpose is and why you exist. And this is a really big one for us young men, isn't it? It's like, we need to know what are we made for, and what am I trying to accomplish, and how do I go about being productive in my life? Like, how do I move into that? And I would argue that many of us don't know how to find our sense of purpose. And many of us may actually subscribe for a purpose that seems to make sense based on what we like and enjoy, but it may be missing the point. I'm going out on a limb here, so feel free to drop in the comments if you disagree with this point. To be certain, I think that even like if you're on the one end of the spectrum where you're like, I have no idea what I'm made for and what I'm supposed to be doing in life, and I feel purposeless, that's one end of the scale. And the other end is like where you've latched onto something that you feel is your purpose, but in essence, I mean, it is a significant part of your purpose, but you may have missed the main purpose if you've not first and foremost applied yourself to personally pursuing walking in integrity. I would say for every one of us, a primary beginning point, a necessary beginning point before any other consideration is, how do we walk in integrity so we're true to ourselves before we're true to like our external world? Many of us may think, hey, I found my purpose already, Benny. I'm already doing this in my career, and that's what my purpose is, or I've built this organization, or I've built this movement, or whatever it is, and we feel that that is our purpose that we're giving ourselves to. And it may be a significant part of your purpose, but if you fail to make you your number one purpose in life, you've kind of missed out already. You may be successful at all these other things that you're pursuing, and yet you'll still find a lack of satisfaction in your purpose in life because you need to work on home base first. Home base is where we're operating out of. Whatever you're doing and pouring your heart into finds more meaning when you first of all do your homework here and here. When you learn how to be true to the way your values are and the way you think about them and the way you feel about them and the way you operate in your world from internal, external, that's where our primary focal point ought to be. Anything else is sort of, how do I say this? Anything else is like moving after something that isn't quite on mark. It's not on point. To be on point, I'm arguing you need to first and foremost hone in on you. Who are you? What do you stand for? How do you operate in this life? That's what's going to feed all of the decisions and the trajectories that you're going to embark on in life, including all those other things you really care about. Are you into photography? Is that your purpose? By all means, pursue it, but first, do yourself first. Make yourself your priority, because when you do that, it starts informing what you say yes to and no to in your pursuit of your photography enthusiasm. Are you into model building? Are you into curing cancer? Whatever it is, whatever that thing is that you're interested in, first make yourself the priority. If you don't know what your purpose in life is, make yourself your first priority. Goodness knows that for a lifetime, for our entire lifetime, our purpose is continuing to hone who we are. That is where we need to be focusing on. That's where our primary point of engagement needs to be. And when we do that, when we commit to learning what our values are, it provides us a sense of direction in life now. Now we know what it is that we stand for and what we're going to be accomplishing. It sustains us, especially when the going gets tough in life. Knowing what your values are keeps you on that pathway where you're like, I'm choosing these options and not these other options because you know exactly how it all translates in your convictions. So decisions that are made that align with your value system are what really enable one to feel like they are in this beautiful, happy space of fulfilling their purpose in life. And it's in such a way that you're not only able to bring positive impact to your community and those that you are able to impact, but it starts off with the way that you impact yourself for good. It's the necessary sequence that we need to be watchful for. Are we doing much good for those outside of us, but depriving ourselves? Because that doesn't really make sense. We need to, first of all, hone in on home base. Do good for here first before you start trying to do good for others around you. And so this is what it looks like when you walk with integrity. You are able to walk into that space that says, I know what my purpose is. My purpose, in addition to all these other things, is right here. I need to work on this. I need to do this on a daily basis for a lifetime. That is enough to provide you plenty of purpose to strive for in life, because we never quite arrive, do we? We continue to try to be better versions of ourselves. Integrity is not easy, my dear young listeners. Integrity is not for the faint of heart. It requires, it demands a strong sense of commitment and consistency, especially through many difficulties that we are sure to experience as we walk this experience in life. But contrasting life before, when we didn't walk with integrity, and then considering what could be, or the benefits that integrity promises and fulfills on, is what feeds this desire to say, I need to have integrity expressed in my life. I can't live without integrity. There's a certain pain point that some people need to experience, and I'm one of those people. And I'd rather for you not to experience this pain point. But there's this point at which you're like, no, I think I'm good. I don't need integrity quite yet. I think I can still figure life out. And you keep on trying, and then years pass, and you keep on going through the same fumbles and painful mistakes until at some point you're like, oh, I've had enough. No more of this. I can't stand this anymore. That's the tipping point, if you will. That's the tipping point that transforms and helps you come to the decision of saying, I'm all in now. I desire integrity at all costs. That's the point that I reached, and it was really painful. It was a painful few years after that still to work through all the consequences that I was responsible and accountable for, and that I had to try and rectify and make amends for. But the desire helps us as young men to pursue consistency and integrity because the rewards are long-lasting. We look at the pain, and we're like, that's gonna suck, and I need to go through it. But the rewards on the other side are far more compelling. When we commit to a life without integrity, the rewards are instantaneous, often, and they're very short-lived. But when we commit to integrity, all of a sudden we're in a different space where we're like, oh, this is gonna suck, this is gonna be painful, but I see why I'm doing this, and on the other end, this is gonna be so worthwhile. This is gonna be so good. This is gonna be the cost is gonna be worth it. It's gonna be this much pain, I'm gonna experience this much loss, but it's gonna be worth it because I desire this integrity. And this is why I say contrast is such a motivating, compelling factor when I consider what desiring integrity for me has looked like. And that's why I want to explain this to you and help you understand, because maybe then you can get a little bit closer to saying, okay, I can desire integrity more and start moving to that space of saying, how do I imbibe this more? How do I walk into it? How do I walk in it? So, my dear young listeners, especially you young men, can I remind you of these 4 words. Consider these 4 words. Remember. Oh God, remember. Remember where you came from. Remember those painful experiences that you don't want to experience again. Remember the futility of you trying to figure things out in the way you thought best. Remember and don't forget. That's number 1. And as you remember, contrast. Compare what was then and what could now be. contrast that, because that's a powerful motivator right there. That contrast is saying, yikes, and ooh, I like this in comparison to this. It's huge. And then desire, saying, I want this. I long for this. And continue to feed that desire so it increases and grows and gains momentum. And then at some point, you're going to shift into pursuing it. You're going to be like, yeah, let's do this. I'm in. My dear friends, if this has been really encouraging or helpful, I would appreciate a like. I would appreciate hearing your comments, especially how this has impacted you. Write me in the comments. I read the comments, and I'm encouraged when I see your feedback. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe. Subscribe, because this is a platform where I want to collate and curate a community of like-minded individuals who are passionately activated by desiring integrity. That's why I'm saying I want to inspire you towards walking with integrity. So I'd love for you to join in and be a part. But until our next conversation, I hope that this serves to compel you to do some deep thinking, some deep reflections, and to desire integrity for your own good and the good of so many of those around you. We'll see you guys in the next video.